Hey guys, we got a refit video today. So this is my Bismarck, and basically I'm going to go through and update parts. From armor to turrets to propulsion. I'll go through it in depth for my changes halfway through, and we'll go through with some combat testing. So let's get stuck in. So we're going to go over some of the changes I've done to my Bismarck first. We're going to have a good look over my old one. This one I made actually a few months ago, several months ago, before I started getting into making the Star Sector ships and improving my Whirlwind design as much as I could, whilst looking up other things. So, first thing is we've got the armor. It's very simple. It's just a lot of metal throughout most of it. Got a double bottom. I always tend to go for double bottom. It's not great. Double bottom is not good when you come across torpedoes that hit you on the bottom. I usually take that in my stride. Submarines are usually quite strong against my ship, so yeah. 4 blocks of metal. And then we get to the Citadel area. So, don't know why I've gone for this sort of thing. Just heavily armoured with surge protectors. I haven't had much testing with surge protectors. Whether or not this works well enough is up to speculation. Then we get to the Citadel, which is just heavy armour and alloy. Now, I don't think this is that good, to be honest. It's good against most other things, since you got the heavy armour being slightly buffed by the alloy. But this is rubbish against, for example, the Tiers 475 heat shells, obviously, but it'll just go through and there's nothing really nearby to hit. But it's also easy to get in, because once you shoot through and start getting through, all the juicy insides are easy to get. I use steam engines just because they're really small and compact, whilst giving you quite a decent amount of power. But mostly it's just empty space, which is usually a bad thing, but it's also a good thing, I've noticed. Obviously you end up coming across stronger enemies, if I'm right with how the campaign works. But it also means that you can space out your vitals easier. So instead of having a really heavily armoured ship, for example, like the Tier, even though the Tier is actually a perfect example of how to armour your ship, I haven't been able to replicate it that easily. But then again, I'm also using it on Tier, the armour scheme against Tier, and Tier's pretty good at taking out armour. And then the top deck is metal with reinforced wood. I've personally grown to dislike reinforced wood. Sure, it's cheap. It's cheaper than metal, but it's also significantly weaker than both alloy and metal, which is quite bothering to me. So then we get to the new ship. Just the raised bow, because that's what the Bismarck has. Also changed at the backside to be a bit more sleeker instead of thick. And then the armour scheme is somewhat toned down, if I'm right. It's, instead of 3 or 4, it is only 2 metal and an alloy poles. I quite like the poles. If I'm right, they do activate the heat and Hesh within it. Alloy obviously being light and weak, so you're kind of relying on not taking too much damage. But all of this is still empty space, because surge protectors in weird spaces. I think I might change that. I think I've improved the armor around the turrets, but we'll get to turrets a bit later. So it's all that. And then we get to the citadel. Also, I'm making use of these transition blocks. These transition blocks are the 4 and 3 version are almost the same health as, see, the 4 beams, 1680, 1207, 1093, and 840. It's slightly less, but it's not substantially less, like having this mixed with the triangle corners. Triangle corners obviously adding to your block limit, well, block amount. They're also very weak and are prone to get shot off. Now my reason for thinking about this is with the repair drones, it's less to repair if you're using this instead of this. I still use it on the bomb purely because cosmetic, it's quite nice, curvy. But I quite like using the transition blocks now. It's quite tanky. The bottom bit you don't need to worry so much about because there's not much there. Obviously the inverted is still quite strong compared to the transition blocks, but with the triangle blocks you're adding almost double the block count. And obviously my theory is having a lower block count so your repair drones can repair more quicker instead of adding more, because each of these is worth 50 materials, which adds up over time. And obviously having multiple triangle blocks does not help too much, because they get shot off quite easily by most weapons. There might be another good reason for it, I don't know. I'm not really an expert when it comes to this game. I've got a lot of hours, but I'm not that great. Also, when it gets straighter, I use the, what are they called again? Beam slopes. So then we start getting to the, is this the heavy armoured section? I can't really tell because it's all, yeah, it's the heavy armoured section. So the same sort of citadel, except instead now for the, because it's you want it to be more armoured in the end, because your engine, your lambs, your resources and all that are behind here. So you naturally want it a bit more protected. So we've got the same, except instead of metal alloy, it's heavy metal alloy, heavy metal whole metal alloy. So we're still getting the stacking bonus for this. Putting the alloy in purely because she heavy. She really heavy. And as usual, the double bottom. I think I might evolve to just have the double bottom but with a double layer on the bottom. I might do that. It's obviously going to be significantly more blocks, more expensive, but less likely to get detonated from below from torpedoes. Whether or not that helps, I don't know. I haven't really tested. Most of my testing is against usually the same stuff, which is ships that absolutely obliterate me. Okay. And that's basically it. We've still got the same double, except instead now we're using metal. Metal instead of metal reinforced wood. It's more expensive, but it's a bit better in terms of defense. So now we get to the turrets. This is my old sort of turret for German ships. It's got the one, for instance, rangefinder, and the main problem with this is the mantlet is on the front. Now I have gone with this elevation mantlet because it has slightly more health than the AA mantlet, but we do end up losing out on the high elevation, because this can only go 45-65 on both sides. Now, my main reason for going for this is because it had more health. Because obviously, once this gets blown off, the gun is basically useless, because straight after it is firing piece, which will almost always get absolutely blown up. We've got the heavy front, heavy slope into metal. It's just heavy all on the front. My idea of this is getting hit from the front. Obviously you want to defend the front of the turret. This back bit is mostly just for looks. The problem with it is, if I'm right, I didn't armor the top that much. Yeah, it's just 2 metal. And then we get to my old way of doing it. Obviously, back then I wasn't sure. I didn't use the templates that much. I would take out the purple bit, and I didn't really think too much about using Tetris. This is just some really basic stuff. Like, most of my Tetris is extremely basic. Like, I'm not going to win any awards for Tetris. No one's going to like this. Anyone who's played from the depths will be probably screaming and being like, oh my god, this guy's such a scrub. And you're not wrong. I'm a scrub. But my idea for this is basically throwing so much shit at them that eventually it starts doing damage. So that this has got a 1 second reload, which is, so it's alright. Going for 380s because that's the Bismarck caliber. We also use HE in 2 parts. Super simple. That was kind of my idea behind it as well. Super simple. And doesn't hit hard. It's really slow. This is a problem. This means that it's going to start cutting off quite quickly. See here, 1805. I personally think this is wrong most of the time. Personally, I think the range should be much lower than what it says here. I think the range is probably only about 1,200, maybe even less than that. Because I've noticed when I would rock this thing around in campaign that you would need to be getting quite close to use the main guns. And of course the slow caliber fire on the main guns were hard to hit. How do I say? It's really difficult to hit anything fast. But with how the ship works, which is just massive volleys, it's basically throwing a sheet of weapon spray into the air, which still works. My other problem with this is the heavy armor is only protected by metal, 1 layer of metal, so heat is just going to go straight through and have no problem mulching the innards. And I don't know how many ships use heat. I just know the tier uses heat because I've been literally hard focusing on the tier. And obviously we've got all the coolers going into the back. This is probably a good utilization of space, even though a decent cram would just go straight through this into the top, which usually is what happens with most of these sort of turrets. It's kind of more hoping that you kill them before they kill you, which is pretty standard from the depths. The outside of the turret is just a single beam of heavy armor. Now, good against reflecting, HE and all that. but bad against anything that is like heat-ish. Because I'm mostly relying on the outer here, and then any heat spray would probably go in, spank this, and not do too much. But yeah, the main problems is low range. I know the effective range says 1800, which is quite reasonable since most of the engagements from the depths are quite close anyway. But from experience with the ship, it's much smaller. Like, I would say the range is probably 1200, maybe even a little bit higher or lower, I'm not sure. There isn't an effective ruler on From the Depths that says how far you are away from the enemy, so it's kind of hard to judge the distance. You just have to accept that your AI is saying you're this close or this far away by how it moves with circle or broadside AI. Or point at, you know. So yeah. It doesn't look... well, it looks okay for a German design. Obviously, I was in love with using these coincident rangefinders. No decorations on it, pretty basic. And then we get to the newer one. Obviously, this is more in line with German ones, in my opinion. It's a bit more boxier, it's got a bit more nicer curves. We like a bit of curves. And this is where it is completely different from the other ship. Because this is actually a decoration. The actual AEA mantler is quite far, not far, but quite far inside, which allows it to have a longer barrel. The weak spot of it obviously being, of all the turrets, is the mantler, and wherever you put the bore evacuator. So as you notice, the fire rate is much lower, 1.8 instead of 1.1. And the reason for that is proper kind of Tetris. I wouldn't say this is perfect Tetris, but it's good for me. With how I like to do it is just separate it so I don't end up brain farting and having one side take control of the other side. So I just split it down the middle, put the recoil in the middle, which is an alright use of space, I'd say. It's following this as the blocks on the bottom, if you see here. This is one of the templates. Usually I just get rid of the alloy. I think, to be honest, once you're done, you should remove these, because this is just too much. This just adds like, what, 30 extra blocks or something per template. This is something I'm going to need to think of. And instead we're using 3 meter autoloaders, which allows us to have a bigger shell. Obviously, we're using 2 levels of them. So yeah, the armour, obviously the decorations on the front, heavy little bits around each part of it. Now, the front, obviously being the most heavily armoured, has slope same as the front, following the same design as the old turret with the metal, but then I've added a pole, a heavy armour pole in there. I'm kind of hoping that this would absorb the heat, so at least on the first few hits it's not going to completely decimate the inside of the ship. There isn't a gap in here, if I'm right, so it's all protected from a certain level until you start getting deep in there and mulching everything. And because the barrel is so long, it works better with the gunpowder, it works better with the accuracy. I quite like this idea of having the mantlet as far back as you can, This one's in the middle, which isn't too far back. Personally, I would probably, well, I should have probably put it back here. But I also got the gauge increases back here, which may bite me in the ass. May bite me in the ass. I'm pretty sure it's going to bite me in the ass. But the top is significantly more armoured. We also haven't got as many vital components, like this spot would all be filled with stuff that is considered vital, like you get instantly in, like this whole bit, and the other one is basically metal, so it's separating the two a bit better, so it's not as weak to cram, because obviously you've got to get through the heavy metal beam, through metal into the delicious insides. Or if it just goes straight through, it has to get through 4 layers by the looks of 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. And the detection, I don't usually use infrared cameras, but I always seem to never pick up stuff that has good bearing in it. So it's got decent bearing. That's one of my main problems. Usually I just put a coincidence 5 meter on there. It looks a bit weird, but I think it works. I don't know. The decorations, gone for the radar on the side, make it look boxier, like the original turret. Some ladders. And I'm not sure what these are, but I guess they're probably air vents. I don't know. I'm no pro at understanding ships. I just like building them. So that's the turret. Propulsion, I have kept the same. It's throughout most of my builds, except this one. Ignore this. Ignore this. I don't know why it's there. Just imagine this bit's over there. So, my original propulsion is usually through these crank motors. Now, I feel like crank motors are decent. Also, these boat rudders. I used to like them, then I realized they have no health, no armor, no anything. They are light, but they are significantly worse. I never touched this tab, never, because I looked at it and I was like, oh my god. But when I realized you only need to take these, I quickly changed my mind. But yes, these they're cheap. Actually, they're not even that cheap. I guess I think that their turning ability is really strong, kind of. But the fact that the 2 meter one has 1,050, it does weigh a lot more. It's just significantly better to just go with the large rudders. Go with the normal rudders if you can find a way to keep using them and just splat them somewhere. Also, they have a 8 meter rudder block on it for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, so I would use these. They are good bang for the buck, I think. Let me check. This is a medium. 200, 220, 470. For basically, if you run this in this way, it's only going to use maybe half, maybe a little bit above half through electricity. So it says 3600 there. 36,000 I mean, in thrust. It's maybe going to only have 1,400 in thrust. I noticed that these also use the same amount of power-ish. Like, this would be 500 compared to the huge propellers. Which uses 400 for 10,000. Taking 11,000 if you want to be pedantic. So yeah. It's actually cheaper to run this than use the large propellers. But actually, well, yeah, the medium crank can easily get blown off. Yeah, the crank is the weakest part, so if this thing gets hit, that's it, it's done. So ideally you want it as small as possible to not get hit. But it is better to use this than it is to use propellers. The reason why you want to use this is it's more compact. Like this bit would, if we used only this bit, it would be the same as propeller. But then we also got the extra 2 at the back, which makes it a bit more space inefficient. But to be honest, after looking at it, these are better. They're slower to turn up, that's the main thing. So if you want this to reverse, it's going to take a while to reverse. If you want it to speed up, it's going to take a while to speed up. That's the main thing these propellers have over this one. So obviously those are kind of more efficient because they can speed up quicker rather than these which just speed up slower. But these are better for more power, to be honest. I just don't like using them anymore. Unless they're the large ones, because the large ones are just beefy. Really beefy, really expensive, really big. So yeah, the propulsion is very simple. I can't see. It's just simply a bunch of small turbines. This monstrosity, I don't know why I've done this. I may as well just be using the small turbines here. I just have a layer of them. And then engine batteries. Not very well armoured. But I'm also relying on the inner armour and my resources. If my resources get blown up, so be it. But usually it's not too bad. This is quite chonky. And then electric engines. Only one. I should be. Most people swear by going multiple. And I can see the point behind it. I'm just lazy. I'm just lazy. And now for the newer one, I have kept it the same for simplicity's sake, and you can end up spending years going through the propulsion stuff. Oh yeah, I use... Did I use them? No, this is pre me using these things. So on this one, I now use these. There's a big problem with using these. Oh, it's because it's being forced to go reverse. Okay. The big problem with these is they slow down your ship. The more faster it goes, the more these slow down. But instead of having loads of propellers on the bottom, you can just slap these at the front and the back and it will work out the same. But obviously it's expensive. It's free energy, though it's slowing you down. I try to keep this ship around its IRL speed, which is 12 meters a second. I'm not sure how fast this guy goes. It's probably not 12 meters a second, but this guy can, I think, go 12 meters a second in a straight line. Maybe 14 if it's on a happy day. And then we get to the spam. This is to counteract this. And this is because this thing is significantly heavier, if I'm right. 1.8 mil. 1.7 mil. Okay, so it's not that much difference. I'll take that back. But this one also has a lot of space. Donated to air pumps. Same as this one. This one's got a lot of air pumps in it. Maybe a little bit less space because the middle has got more armor. And this thing doesn't have any drag things slowing it down, whereas this guy does. It's because I want this guy to have the water line here. Why? Because it looks pretty. It's actually worse to have freeboard in this game because water is like the most OP thing. You want to be in it. You want to be deep in it. You want to be really deep in it. Water is broken in this. If you can go fast in the water, you are basically amazing. Now, saying that, if you can get an airship that is constantly going like this, in a U motion, like I've seen with, I can't remember what ship it was, whether it was a Grey Talons or a Deepwater Guard, I don't know, but if you can get a ship that does that, you are basically impervious to anything other than lasers and particle cannons. So if you can't do that, the next best thing is to go deep. I want to make something that skates along the ground, deep underwater. It's broken. Submarines are broken. I will always say this until they change something. The only problem with submarines is they're fucking slow. That's the only problem, because drag is 7 times underwater compared to above. So anyway, that's where this thing comes in. It raises it up, makes it look pretty. It's purely for looks, and it slows down the ship. So yeah, the main good thing about it is if your ship is really heavy with 0 buoyancy, this will counteract it as long as your ship can move forward. Like my Whirlwind, in the butt, it has thrusters, air thrusters, that push it. Now obviously if you're underwater it doesn't work, so you have to have something to push the butt up, and then the propulsion pushes it, which then pushes these, which pushes your ship upwards, or downwards, whichever you want. I originally did this with the rudders, these rudders, but a recent patch, I don't know what patch or whatever it was the propeller patch for these that changed the way the wooden rudders work. I originally had the wooden rudders as this. So yeah, these only function as rudders now, if I'm right. And it was pretty strong to just use them as like this. It still works to use it like this, though the drag slows the ship down significantly, so you have to add more. And that's where we come to the more section. Where I'm using a bunch of these. I don't know why this is up. If this starts happening, just build like a duct, like right behind and right here. It should fix the problem. If these ones are refusing to work, which they might be, it's no problem to fix. So yeah, they both go the same speed. If I'm right, they should. They use the same amount of materials. There's no difference. Decorations, I haven't gone crazy with this. Haven't really done much to it, like I have done for some of my other ships. Obviously this one's got more decorations on the side. It's got this, which is pretty ugly, and I was like, yes, this is pretty ugly, so I changed it over for this. Like this bow is purely for looks. Obviously you can't build spherical items. So I built this. Looks a bit better. Some just random ass things, because apparently the Bismarck had a bunch of stuff here which I couldn't be asked to recreate. So yeah, decorations, just moved the smokestack a bit. We did lose a gun from it, but I mean, this gun's only useful for running away slightly and running away towards slightly. The lambs are virtually the same, except they've been moved slightly forward. There's only one extra gun. Because I make 0 space here. I haven't decided to make a catapult or a catapult fighter like you see with the Guernsey. Actually, no, I think I did build something, but I just never used it. I can't remember what it was. Oh no, it's not that one. It's not that one. No, that's the bomber. Yeah. Obviously got these to counteract the rolling, because where are they? Oh, because this rudder, when it turns, your whole ship basically wants to capsize. So you've got this to stop it from capsizing. And then we got it on the front, so it skates upwards, so we have the water. Yeah, that's the changes. Obviously, to counteract for the not having reinforced wood, I've gone for a nice urine yellow, I guess you could call this. It just looks better, it's a bit harder, it looks nicer. And we're going to do a few tests with them. So maybe even a few fights. Yeah. Let's get on with that. So after the testing, it's easily better than its predecessor and the finest hour counterpart. Against some of the hard steel Strider ships, it fares well, but it doesn't seem to have enough strength to deal with a tier. Though, I think with player aiming, I could see the Mark II being very effective. So, it's a long video, but I wanted to do something more in depth. But yeah, I'm going to start branching out, maybe make some faction ships and Star Sector DLC ships. But mostly going to focus on capital ships as they seem to do better. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, peeps.